How do I know what my race pace should be if I've never done that distance before? So we're going to talk about race pace today. And specifically, we're going to look at races that you haven't done before. So first time doing a 10K, first time doing a half marathon, first ever marathon. How do you decide how fast you're going to run? And this would apply also if you haven't done that distance in a long time. So let's say you had a break from running because maybe you had kids and didn't do it for a few years, or you got a major injury that put you out for like a year or so, or you had a significant drop in your fitness for other reasons, and you're like, where am I at? So what we're going to talk about is a really good way to get in the ballpark of what is a good target race pace for you. And the goal here is to get a good ballpark target, because your objective, if you're returning to a race distance or if you're doing the race distance for the first time, like let's say you're doing your first ever marathon, the goal is to finish strong, enjoy the race, and set the bar. And what I mean by setting the bar is put a score on the board, put the bar up so you can try and beat it next time. What we don't want to do is hit a wall, end up walking, and then we don't know what we're capable of because you got the race pace too fast initially, hit the wall, had to walk for a bit or slow down dramatically, and then you don't know, like, what could I have done? So we want to avoid that. We want to make sure you run the whole thing and finish strong, enjoy the race, and then it's like, okay, what am I going to be capable of next time? And today we're just going to talk about road races because it keeps it more specific. I may come back and do an episode on trail races later, but we're just going to stick to road races today. So we're talking 5K, 10K, 10 miler, half marathon, and marathon. And for the 10 miler, you're just going to do the same thing as I'm going to describe for the half marathon. And for the 5K, we're going to do that last because it's a little bit different and it's a little bit simpler. And the method that I'm going to talk about using fast finish long runs, that's what we're going to use to work out the pace for your 10K, half marathon, or marathon. So the idea is we're going to do fast finish long runs at weeks 6, 5, and 4 pre-race. So 6 weeks before the race, 5 weeks before the race, 4 weeks before the race. So this is what we do with our athletes, and it slots nicely into their training, so it's not disruptive, but it's a really nice way to get an idea of what your race pace should be without having to have you sign up for a race or anything weird like that that's going to be disruptive and require a bunch of organization. And it doesn't have to be exactly weeks 6, 5, and 4 pre-race, but this is how I'm going to describe it so you get the idea. And what the fast finish long run is just to do the long run that was planned on your training program. But the last portion of it, we're going to do a fast finish, meaning you're going to run as fast as you can for that period. And then we're going to use your average pace during that fast finish to estimate your race pace. Now, obviously, because the distances are different, we have a slightly different process, but this works reasonably well for most people that are doing their first race at that distance or if they're returning to that distance. So we'll go through them one at a time. Okay, so let's start with an example for the 10K. So in weeks 6, 5, and 4 pre-race, we're going to take the long run and just do the last 15 minutes of it at the fastest pace that you think you can hold. So let's say your long run for those weeks is going to be an hour 15, and an hour and 30 minutes on the Sunday. We're going to take the last 15 minutes of each of those runs and run them as fast as we can. The third time you do it, we're going to take your average pace during that 15 minutes, and then that's going to be your race pace. So let's say for that final attempt at this, during your 90-minute long run, you do the last 15 minutes as fast as you can. You hold your pace as even as you feel able. So don't go too fast and then have to slow down. Try and hold it steady. And let's say you hold it at 6 minutes per kilometer, which is the same as 9:40 minutes per mile. Let's say that was your average pace for that last 15 minutes. That's going to be your race pace. So you're going to try and hold 6 minutes per kilometer or 9:40 minutes per mile for your 10K race, which will bring you in at about an hour. Now, for the half marathon and the marathon, the process is basically the same. We're going to do a fast finish long run in weeks 6, 5, and 4 pre-race, but the distances are going to be a little different and the durations are going to be a bit different. So we're going to make the fast finish portion that we're going to measure 30 minutes. And the training runs are going to be longer because you're training for a longer event. So they'll usually be longer. So let's say you're training for a half marathon, and in weeks 6, 5, and 4 pre-race, you have a 2 hour, a 2 hour 15, and a 2 hour 30 long run scheduled. for the last 30 minutes of each of those runs, you're going to run as fast as you can, holding a relatively even pace. When you do that 2.5 hour run, the third attempt at this, whatever pace you're able to hold for the fast finish portion, which is 30 minutes long, your average pace for that time is going to be your race pace. So let's say you do that and you were running at 540 minutes per kilometer, which is the same as 9 minutes and 9 seconds per mile. That was your average pace during that fast finish portion, that last 30 minutes. That's going to be your race pace, which is going to be around a 2-hour finish for the half marathon. Okay, so finally, the marathon. And this one is the one where it's most useful to do this and the one where it's most important. So if you get your race pace wrong for the marathon, the chances of a catastrophic blow up are much higher than they are for the half marathon. And we'll come back to that in a sec. So it's really important that we get in the right ballpark for your race pace. The process is the same. So we're going to take the last 30 minutes of your long run on weeks 6, 5, and 4 pre-race, and we're going to go as fast as we can. The long run is usually longer. So you might find we'll often give 3 hours, 3:15, 3.5 hours for the long run during those weeks. And then the last 30 minutes of each of those is going to be a fast finish where you're going to run as fast as you can. We take that 3.5 hour long run, and then we take that last 30-minute section where you were running as fast as you can, and we see what your average pace was. Now, let's say it was 6 minutes and 24 seconds per kilometer, which is the same as 10 minutes and 18 seconds per mile. That would become your race pace. And if you were able to hold that, you'd finish your marathon in about 4.5 hours. Now, the nice thing about this method is it works both ways. So if you already have a rough idea of what you think your race pace might be, you can test it during those fast finishes. So let's say you think you can do a 4-hour marathon, but you're not sure and you want to try it out and you've never done a marathon before. For those fast finishes on your long run, you're going to try and hold your estimated race pace, like what you think you can do, and see if you can actually do it. So for that 4-hour marathon, it's 540 minutes per kilometer. 909 minutes per mile, is that? Yes. So that is going to be your target. And then you see if you can do it. So if you think you can do a 4-hour marathon for the last 30 minutes of those 3 long runs, try and hold your estimated race pace, right? And if you can do it, that's a good indication that you are able to attempt it, right? It's not a guarantee, but it's a good indication you're in the right ballpark. If it's really easy, then you might decide to try a little bit more aggressive, although it is your first marathon, so it's better to finish a bit too strong and then do another one a few months later. If you can't do it, then you probably want to adjust your race pace down. So say you attempt it in week 6 pre-race and you just can't hold that estimated race pace. Okay, see what you can do, and then the following week just see what you can do. Don't have an agenda, just see what you can do. And then 4 weeks pre-race, see what you can do. And then that'll give you, okay, I was off. I'm actually not a 4-hour marathoner right now. I'm probably more like a 4:10 or a 4:15. It's great. You don't have to waste all that time on race day screwing it up. You can screw it up in the training, and then on race day, you're more in the right ballpark, and then you can go for your 4-hour marathon later when you've had more time, more training, and more experience. Now, for the 5K, it's much easier because 5Ks, you don't have that same concern of doing too much during the pace calibration training run. The chances are that you're not going to need a lot of recovery for it. So we would divide this into 2 camps. If you're doing more like a couch to 5K and your goal is to get into running and you want to do the 5K to motivate you to do it, your goal should just be to finish. You should run by effort, and you should try and run at a kind of 6 out of 10 effort. And that's it. You shouldn't have a race pace in mind. Just try and run what you feel for you as a 6 out of 10 effort. Finish the race, see what time you get, and then from the next race, you can try and do a little bit better. The nice thing about the 5K is you can do one the next weekend, you can do one 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, the following month. You can just get straight back into it if you feel like you could have done better and just try and do better. It's the same. For a more experienced runner, if you've had a period of time off, but you're going back to the 5K, I would just do a time trial. Like just do a 5K time trial, 6 weeks pre-race, 5 weeks pre-race, and 4 weeks pre-race, and get an idea where you're at. And that's a good way to just kind of estimate. And the reason you can do that is because you're going to recover from that time trial much quicker than you would a 10K or definitely a half marathon time trial. And nobody's going to be doing a full marathon time trial. That would be very silly. And the reason this is most helpful for the marathon, and this is why we do it most often for the marathon, is for a couple of reasons. A lot of runners we work with get injured trying to do their first marathon, right? That's a really, really, really common scenario. We help them get past the injury and back to full training. Then they want to go back and try the marathon again, but they don't know like what race pace they should target. And this is how we work it out for them. And it's usually pretty decent at getting them in the right ballpark. And the reasons it's most helpful for the marathon is because, like I said, you definitely don't want to do a full marathon time trial in your training. That would be really silly because it takes really long to recover from a marathon, like 1, 2, 3 weeks kind of thing. And that's just going to ruin those 3 weeks of training. So we don't want to do that. It's not worth it. So when you look at any training program for a marathon, usually you'll see that the longest long run is like 3.5 hours, or 20 miles or 30K or 32K. Very rarely will they have you do the full distance. And that's because it would take far too long to recover from and the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Now, I want to talk a little bit about race strategy as well, because my advice on this is usually pretty uniform. And there's definitely the case for if you're going back to an event that you haven't done in a while, or if you're going to do your first 10K, your first half marathon, your first marathon. When it comes to your race strategy, most PRs, personal records, are set with an even split or a negative split, meaning that an even split would mean you ran the same pace pretty much for the entire race. A negative split would mean that you ran faster in the second part of the race, the second half of the race, than you did in the first. It's very rare for someone to perform very well by running faster in the first half of a race and slower in the second. Although it does happen, it's not usually a recommended strategy and it's not one that I encourage. So once you have figured out your race pace target by doing those fast finish long runs, you are going to try and hold race pace for 3/4 of your race and then make a decision. So let me explain that a little bit. Let's say you're going to do a 10K and you want to do it in 1 hour because your estimated race pace was 6 minutes per kilometer. You hold exactly that for the first 3/4 of the race. Then you decide, how do I feel? So you cover, let's say, 7 kilometers, and you're not allowed to go any faster. You have to hold 6 minutes per kilometer. What is it in minutes per mile? Let me check. 940 minutes per mile up until 7 kilometers. And then you make a decision, okay? I feel good. You try and pick it up and see what you can do. You just go as fast as you can for the last 3 kilometers. Or I feel awful. I'm going to try and hold on for dear life and see if I can get anywhere near my race pace or maybe even still hit it. And then the process is the same for the half marathon and the marathon, but it's really, really important for the marathon. So once you have done your fast finishes and you've worked out roughly what your race pace should be, let's say you were on track based on your fast finish long runs to do a 4-hour marathon. So you can hold 5 minutes 40 for the last 30 minutes of your long runs. Sorry, 5:40 minutes per kilometer. Then you're going to hold that and no faster for the first 3/4 of your marathon, and you're not allowed to go faster. And the reason this is so important is because your marathon pace is going to be quite slow for you comparatively to what you could do for about half a marathon. I haven't explained that very clearly. You're going to feel really good in the first half of the race, and you're going to want to go faster. And it's a terrible, terrible mistake that we all make, and don't do it. You have worked out a rough race pace, stick to it until 3/4 of the race through. So that'd be like 30 kilometers, 32 kilometers, or 20 miles. Then it's like, okay, now I decide. I feel good. I'm going to push and try and beat my target time a little bit. You probably won't feel like that. Or I feel awful. I'm going to try and hold on for dear life and see if I can hold this pace until the end. And then making the decision whether to speed up or slow down at 3/4 of the race through allows the fatigue to set in, allows the excitement to die down, and lets you execute the plan that you have worked out. And then decide, okay, I'm just having a good day. I'm going to speed up. and see if you can get a better time. Or I'm not having a good day, or maybe this was a little bit aggressive for me. I'm just going to try and hold on. And it stops you having the experience of running too fast for the first half of a race, blowing up. And then if you do that in a marathon and you end up walking a bunch of it, your finish time can be like an hour more than you thought it was going to be. So that's why it's so important that you do this for the marathon, because you're going to feel great for the first half and awful in the second half, and you don't want to make any decisions until you get to that 3/4 of the race through. So using this strategy of fast finish long runs at week 6, 5, and 4 pre-race is a really nice way to work out a rough estimate for a target race pace. So if you do that and then try and hold that exact race pace for 3/4 of the race, there's a good chance, whether it's your first 10K, first half marathon, or first marathon, or your first time returning to those events after a long time off, that you're going to have a good, fun day, that you're going to finish strong, you're going to enjoy the race, and you're going to set the bar for you to then go and beat in the future. Now, if you would like some help getting back to one of those events, if you've done it before, or if you want to do your first half marathon or your first marathon, and you don't think it's possible, it might be. And I would love to chat to you about it. We have helped dozens of runners get to their first marathon. That's the big one that people love. And if you want to do that and you're just not sure that you can do it on your own, I would love to talk to you. So just click the link in the description, book a call, we'll have a chat and see if we're the right people to help you do it.